Welcome to the Rankled Engineer. So I'm in process of building this dining room kitchen table out of some kaya, which is African mahogany, and I ran into a problem with a little bit of bowing in that table. So I had to build a router planer so that I could get it back to flat. So I kind of had to stop one build, start on this build. So I finished this a little while ago and I've used it on the table and it works pretty darn well. So this is that build. This should be pretty straightforward. You have your gantry slide, and then you've got your rails, and they're made of MDF, a little bit of steel. I have seen there's lots of these variants out there online, so you can find all sorts of fun things to do. I went ahead and made this pretty robust so that I can use it for a long time to come. This really was a one-off use for me. I haven't needed to plane anything this big, or I shouldn't say I haven't needed to, but I haven't built a router sled like this because it just didn't seem worth it. Everything else I did, I could sand. But this table I wanted to be pretty near perfect. And so it's pretty heavy duty. I can go up to about 54 inches wide, and these rails are 6 feet long. And I've got a nice aluminum wear strip on here, and I just throw down a little bit of oil, and she slides like butter. And I've got a 1 1/4 inch mortising bit, and then a 2.5 inch bit that you'll see in this video. They both work pretty well. This is a sharper bit, and the smaller bit's definitely easier to move back and forth and cut through. This router's a champ. The 3.5 horsepower just tears through the lumber without slowing down, and never overheated. I mean, it was running for half an hour to an hour continuously, and it worked great. And having both grips was awesome. So enjoy the build. Now I was going to use my normal sheet material, which is melamine, but when I went to the home center, they were out of stock. So I did find some MDF, and luckily it comes in shelving strips. So it made it easier for me to run this through the table saw, keeping everything nice and straight. I cut out 2 pieces for the rails, a strip for the gantry plate, and then a couple of strips to make gusset plates out of to reinforce the rails. I cut everything to length, including a couple dozen gussets to help reinforce the rails. I got this first rail put together, learned a lot about this process. Epoxied down my aluminum that'll hopefully act as a good wear strip. I've not done a lot of stuff out of MDF. I've used it occasionally, and I gotta say some things I don't like about it. As we saw, it split when I was nailing with the 16 gauge nailer, and also when I was trying to put in screws. So my trusty melamine was a little better at that than the MDF proves to be. It cuts nice, it's nice and square, and seems stable enough, but yeah, that was a bit disappointing. So I learned a few things. The 23 gauge pin nailer seems to work pretty well at putting this stuff together without causing it to break. However, because the nails are so small and thin, and this is such a dense board, they do wander quite easily. So learning that lots of clamps, a little bit of glue, and some time make it seem to go together all right. And I'm using my usual 2-part Gorilla Glue epoxy, spreading it out as evenly and as thin as possible so that it doesn't affect the thickness of the rail. Both rails, they be pretty much done. We do have a couple little pins sticking out of the bottom that I'm going to have to grind off and take care of. But time to work on the slide. And for the slide, I've got 2 steel angles. Do with these is I need to cut them down to 66 inches is I think what I decided, and use this will be the piece that sits between the 2 rails, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to clip the corner on it just so that it clears that inside corner. I'm going to use a sanding disc or a deburring disc to take down just the mill scale on this. You get it kind of smooth and shiny. Drill press some holes in it to screw it to that. Got some little screws there, and then this will need to get routed up the center. That's a pretty good fit, I think. Yeah, if I mount it roughly tight to that, it should be fine. Alright, I think that's the straight side. So this goes down. I really need to knock this corner off, and I could route it. I could take it out the table saw and cut it at an angle. This stuff is horribly abrasive, so I don't really want to use it on my router bit, so I am just going to do it with a belt sander. Nobody's ever going to see it, so. Alright, the pieces together. Seems to be pretty straight and flat. So I'm going to route the groove in the center. Hopefully it doesn't lose too much rigidity by having that piece pulled out. Alright, so after pushing on this, the deflection was bothering me a little bit, so luckily I can do the math. These are 1 1/4 inch angles, probably should have used 2 inch, so I got some 2 inch by, it's 5/16, they're not 5/16, 3/16 flat bar, and I'm just going to attach it through both using some pop rivets, and that should hopefully stiffen this up to where I want it. The deflection wasn't bad, but you know, it felt like the right thing to do. So I think I'm going to start in the middle and work one way and then work another. Much better. The sled is done, and the rails are almost done. So the last thing I want to do, I want to be able to use this as a little clamping rail, and I planed it just shy of this. Doesn't have to hold a lot, so glue it and just pop a couple. Alright, the rails are done. It's time for the first test piece. This table's not perfectly flat, so I just have these rails lightly clamped down so that they don't bend. I've got this 2.5 inch and it's 1 1/4 inch bit that I'm going to try. I think the 1 1/4 is a little bit sharper, and I mean, maybe even a slightly thicker chunk of carbide on there. This is supposed to be kind of a plunge cutter. This one is not, but I don't really ever intend on using these as a plunge cutter other than when I use that to make a hole in the rail. So to clamp this piece down, I think I'm just going to screw this into the table. I mean, you definitely get some marks, but I think that'll stand out. I'm going to switch over to the smaller bit and see how that does. That one cuts way nicer. I don't know if it's... I'm not sure if it's because of the... It's just so much sharper, or it's smaller. I like it. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining the Rankled Engineer on this build. Now it's time to get to work on the table, get that thing flat. Have a good one. Now, as I said, I've already used this router planer on my dining room table. When that build becomes available, you'll be able to check it out in the link above. So thanks for joining the Rankled Engineer. Hope you enjoyed this build. Have a good one.